Before today's video, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on the latest videos. If you want to see a case or topic covered by Paranormally Listed, then go to criminallylisted.com and fill out the questionnaire under the Suggest a Case tab. Number 3. Ahmad Suradji. Indonesia is a country in Southeast Asia made up of 17,000 islands. Lubuk Pakam is a small town in South Sumatra, Indonesia. In 1987, it was home to 47-year-old Ahmad Suradji and his 3 wives, who were sisters. Suradji was a respected shaman, which is known in Indonesia as a dukun. Belief in black magic and sorcery are common in Indonesia, especially in rural areas. Locals believe Suradji had supernatural powers. They sought him out to improve their luck, make them more attractive, keep their spouses faithful, and so on. In April 1997, a 21-year-old woman visited Suradji and did not return home. Her father alerted the local authorities. The police went to Suradji's home. They discovered the dead body of a woman. It was not the body of the missing woman they were looking for, but that of a different woman. The police brought Suradji and his eldest wife, Tamini, in for questioning. Suradji initially confessed to killing 16 women, but then the police unearthed 25 bodies on his property. Suradji then confessed to the full extent of his crimes and his motive. He explained he had killed the women to gain stronger supernatural powers. Suradji said that 11 years earlier, in 1986, he had a dream where his deceased father came to him. His father told him he needed to drink the saliva of 72 dead women. If he did, he would receive dark, magical powers. However, Suradji realized it was going to take a long time to find 72 women who died naturally. So he decided to kill women. Getting the victims to come to his home was easy. Since he was a respected dukun, young women came to his home looking for his help with various parts of their lives. Many victims were sex workers, and they went to Suradji to make themselves more attractive. Other women wanted their boyfriend or husband to be faithful. Suradji came up with a ritual for killing the young women. The women paid him $200 to $400. He then led them to a sugar plantation near his home. He had them get into a hole and he buried them up to their waist. He told them it was part of the ritual. Once they were stuck in the hole, he strangled them to death with an electrical cord. He then drank their saliva. Afterward, he would dig out the body and then bury it closer to his home. He made sure their heads pointed towards his home. He believed this enhanced the dark magic he was getting from the bodies. The police eventually found the bodies of 42 women. They were between the ages of 11 and 30 and disappeared over the previous 11 years. Suradji and his oldest wife, Tamini, were charged with murder. The police alleged that she helped in the murders and the cover-up. Suradji's other 2 wives left the area after the arrests. Suradji and Tamini went on trial in April 1998. They claimed they were innocent and they were tortured into confessing. However, they never explained how the bodies of the women ended up on their property. They were both sentenced to death. Tamini's sentence was later commuted to life in prison. Suradji spent 10 years on death row. In July 2008, 59-year-old Ahmad Suradji was executed via a firing squad. At the time of this recording, he is Indonesia's most prolific serial killer. Number 2. The Obeah Man. St. Croix is a Caribbean island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. In 1984, it was home to a bizarre set of murders related to black magic. The first one happened on May 24, 1984. 38-year-old Haig Caesar was found dead in his car, which had been driven off the road about a mile from his property. Although there were no signs of foul play, the police suspected his death was a homicide. An autopsy was performed. It was determined that Caesar had died of cyanide poisoning. Before his death, Caesar was in contact with an Obeah Man. Obeah is a system of spiritual and healing practices rooted in African traditions, particularly common in the Caribbean. It's also been described as a form of sorcery. Practitioners believe a witch doctor, known as an Obeah Man, can communicate with spirits, cast spells, and perform rituals to influence events and individuals' fortunes. It's also believed they have dark, magical powers. According to Caesar's wife, the Obeah Man told him 3 jars full of priceless coins were buried on his property. Caesar couldn't access the jars because ancient spirits were guarding them. The Obeah Man told Caesar he could get rid of the spirits in exchange for $100,000. Caesar borrowed money and drained his bank accounts shortly before he was killed. The police think that Caesar paid the Obeah Man the money. The Obeah Man gave him cyanide, telling him it was a magical potion. If he drank it, the spirits would disappear and he would be able to get the jars. Caesar drank it, not realizing it was poison, and it killed him. It's unknown if he was alone when he drank the poison or if the Obeah Man was with him at the time. 2 years passed and no arrests were made in Haig Caesar's case. In 1986, bar owners Edsel Stridon and Carmen Torres took out a $54,000 loan. The couple said that the loan was to expand their business. On September 13, 1986, they took the $54,000 and got into Stridon's pickup truck. According to Torres' daughter, Stridon had a small bottle he took with them. 3 hours later, Carmen Torres was found on the side of the road. She was clinging to life. She died on the way to the hospital. A short time later, Edsel Stridon was found dead in his truck at a nearby beach. Both of their clothes were damp with seawater. The cause of death was cyanide poisoning. The $54,000 they had on them was missing. Christadoth and Raha Majara owned and operated a small grocery store on the island. Radha's 2 daughters from another marriage helped them run the business. Unfortunately, the couple was having financial problems. They had taken out a loan to improve their business, and they were having trouble paying off the debt. Radha's daughter said they started getting daily phone calls from an unidentified man. Whenever Christadoth spoke to the man, he had his stepdaughters leave the room. Christadoth and Radha borrowed $25,000 from relatives. Radha told her daughters they needed to give the money to the man on the phone. Her daughter tried to ask her more questions, but her mother ordered her not to talk about it anymore. Around 7:30 p.m. on November 18, 1988, Radha left the family's home in her car. Her daughters thought it was unusual for her to leave alone in the evening. About half an hour later, Christadoth left the home and drove in the opposite direction of his wife. 2 hours later, the police were called to a nearby beach. Radha had been in a minor car accident. The police found Radha unconscious in her car. She died on the way to the hospital. She was found about half a mile from where Carmen Torres had been found 2 years earlier. Neither Radha nor her car showed any signs of foul play. About 60 miles away, Christadoth was found lying on a beachfront road in only his shorts. Like his wife, there were no signs of foul play. Both of their clothes were wet with seawater. Like the other 3 victims, they had died of cyanide poisoning. It was only after the murders of Christadoth and Radha Majara that the police realized a conman serial killer was on the loose. All the victims were swindled out of large amounts of money and died of cyanide poisoning. Besides Haig Caesar, all their clothes were damp with seawater. Shortly before their murders, they were in contact with a mysterious man. In the case of Haig Caesar, he was communicating with an Obeah Man. The police said the Obeah Man's routine was cruel, simple, and effective. He promised his victims access to riches, but they needed to pay him up front. After they paid him, he gave them the cyanide, claiming it was a potion. But he was just killing any witnesses who could identify him as the con man. None of the victims' friends or family ever saw the Obeah Man. Raya's daughters heard his voice, and they said he had a strong French West Indian accent. But that is the only description of him. It's been almost 40 years since the first death, and the Obeah Man murders remain unsolved. Number 1. Adolfo Constanzo. Adolfo Constanzo was born on November 1st, 1962, in Miami, Florida. His mother was a 15-year-old Cuban immigrant. His father abandoned him and his mother when he was 6 months old. Later, Constanzo said his first memory was being examined by a Palo Mayombe sorcerer when he was 6 months old. Palo Mayombe is an Afro-Cuban religion that merges traditional African beliefs with elements of indigenous, Caribbean, and Catholic influences. Central to Palo Mayombe is the use of ritualistic ceremonies. Practitioners often use sacred cauldrons called nganja to communicate with spirits and seek guidance, protection, and power. Blood and other offerings are added to the nganja. The sorcerer said that Constanzo was the chosen one and he was meant for greatness. When Constanzo was a year old, he and his mother moved to San Juan, Puerto Rico. In San Juan, his mother remarried. During this time, he learned more about Palo Mayombe from sorcerers and sorceresses. He also went with his mother several times to Haiti, where he was taught about voodoo. When Constanzo was 10, he and his family returned to Miami. His stepfather died shortly after they moved to Miami. The family moved around constantly because Constanzo's mother never paid the rent. Constanzo had 2 younger brothers and a younger sister. The family usually trashed any home while living there. When Constanzo was a teenager, he became an apprentice to a Palo Mayombe sorcerer. The sorcerer made most of his money by casting spells and performing rituals for drug dealers. In the early 1980s, Constanzo supposedly developed psychic abilities. For example, his mother said he predicted the 1981 assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan. Constanzo also worked as a part-time model. In 1983, he went to Mexico City for a modeling job. While there, he also did tarot card readings and developed a following. His first 2 disciples were Martin Quintana and Omar Aria. Constanzo was bisexual, but he preferred men. Quintana and Aria became Constanzo's lovers as well. In mid-1984, Constanzo relocated from Miami to Mexico City. He soon developed a reputation as a powerful sorcerer who could cast spells and see into the future. By the end of the year, Quintana and Oria had moved in with him. Constanzo attracted the attention of drug dealers and members of the cartels. Constanzo offered to perform ceremonies that would make them invisible to police or bulletproof. He also told them he saw into the future and he could advise on aspects of the business, like when to ship drugs and where to store them. Many dealers hired Constanzo. Constanzo performed rituals with animal sacrifices with many different animals. Some examples include, for $6 he would kill a rooster, a boa constrictor cost $450, and a lion cub was $3,100. By mid-1985, Constanzo and his followers were raiding cemeteries for human bones to add to the ganja. Constanzo's reputation grew and he gained more followers, including 4 police officers. One of his new followers introduced him to Guillermo Arturo Calzada. The Calzada family were drug traffickers. Constanzo performed spells and rituals for the family. As the months passed, Constanzo believed he was responsible for the family's success. He demanded to be made a partner in their business. Calzada refused. On April 30th, 1987, Calzada, his wife, mother, business associate, secretary, maid, and bodyguard went missing from Calzada's house. Over the next 2 weeks, their badly mutilated bodies washed up on shore in a nearby river. Fingers, toes, and ears had been cut off. Hearts and sex organs were cut off and missing. The spine of one person had partially been ripped out. Some were shot and others had their throats slit. The police assumed the 7 murders were drug-related. In July 1987, Adolfo Constanzo met 22-year-old Sarah Adeltre. She was driving, and Constanzo pulled his car in front of her to make sure she stopped so he could ask her out. Adeltre was born in Matamoros, Mexico. Matamoros is across the border from Brownsville, Texas. Adeltre attended school in Brownsville. When she met Constanzo, she was a student at Texas Southmost College in Brownsville. She was mostly taking classes in physical education. Constanzo and Adeltre had a brief sexual relationship. It did not last long because Constanzo preferred men. However, she became an integral part of the cult. She became second in command. She was known as the godmother, and Constanzo was the godfather. In late 1987, Constanzo and his cult relocated to a desert base near Matamoros called Rancho Santa Elena. On May 28, 1988, Constanzo sacrificed 38-year-old drug dealer Hector de la Fuente and 52-year-old farmer Moses Castillo close to the ranch. While smiling, he shot them both in the head. Months later, in July 1988, while cult members watched, Constanzo tortured Ramon Esquivel. Esquivel was a trans woman who was the roommate of one of Constanzo's followers. He tortured Esquivel in a bathtub by cutting off fingers, toes, and his penis. He also partially flayed the trans woman. Esquivel's mutilated remains were dumped on a street corner. Constanzo had made a connection with another drug trafficking family, the Hernandez family. On August 12, 1988, Ovidio Hernandez was kidnapped along with his 2-year-old son by a rival drug family. That night, Constanzo sacrificed an unidentified man. The next day, Ovidio and his son were released. Ovidio and his brother, Elio, became devoted followers of Constanzo. Constanzo had strict rules with his followers. For example, they weren't allowed to do drugs. One follower who broke this rule was George Gomez. During a ritual, Constanzo attacked him with the blunt side of a machete. He forced his other followers to torture Gomez. Constanzo killed him with a hammer. His blood was drained onto a plate and was put in the ganja. On February 14, 1989, Constanzo tortured 27-year-old Esquivel Luna. Luna was a marijuana trafficker with a large supply. Constanzo used a pair of rusty scissors to torture Luna. Constanzo demanded to know where he had the marijuana hidden. Luna quickly gave up the information and said his 2 friends were watching the marijuana. Although he gave up the information Constanzo was looking for, the torture continued. Supposedly, after Luna was mutilated, he was forced to dig a grave. Constanzo's cult members kidnapped Luna's friends, 30-year-old Ruben Garza and 23-year-old Ernesto Diaz, and brought them to the ranch. All 3 were shot to death with a machine gun in front of the freshly dug grave. Then they were all mutilated. Their brains, hearts, and penises were taken for the Naganja. On February 25, 1989, the cult kidnapped the second cousin of Ovidio and Elio Hernandez, 14-year-old Jose Garcia. He was the second cousin of Ovidio and Elio Hernandez. While he was still alive, Elio decapitated his 14-year-old second cousin with a machete. Then Jose's chest was cut open and his heart and lungs were taken for the Nganja. They removed the flesh from the skull and kept it. On March 13th, the cult kidnapped a small-time drug dealer. 8 of the cult members took turns cutting him. Then Constanzo brought him into the shack that held the Nganja. Constanzo continued to torture the young man, but he became annoyed because the man didn't scream. Constanzo believed that if a human sacrifice didn't die in pain and didn't scream, then the ritual didn't work. Even when Constanzo started to flay the man, he didn't scream. The man ultimately died of blood loss. Constanzo was angry about the sacrifice. He ordered his followers to kidnap an American college student for the next sacrifice. He specifically wanted someone who was blonde and soft. On March 14, 1989, 21-year-old Mark Kilroy was spending his spring break in Matamoros. He was a pre-med student at the University of Texas at Austin. Constanzo's cult members kidnapped him outside of a bar. Kilroy was sexually assaulted and castrated. He was killed when his head was cracked open with a machete. His brain was put into the Nganja. Constanzo believed it would make the spirits more intelligent. Kilroy's body was buried with several other sacrifices. Kilroy's disappearance got a lot of media attention in the United States. The case was even featured on America's Most Wanted. But Mark Kilroy's case remained unsolved for weeks. No one had any inkling he was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered by a cult. On March 28, 1989, Sarah Dulce lured her former boyfriend, Gilberto Sosa, to her home. 3 cult members kidnapped him and took him to the ranch. Sosa was tortured and one of the cultists slit his throat. On April 1, 1989, one of the cult members, 20-year-old Serafin Hernandez Garcia, sped past a police roadblock. Because of Constanzo's spells, he believed he was invisible and bulletproof, so he didn't feel he needed to stop. The police followed him to the ranch and then lost him. They looked around the ranch and found some occult paraphernalia. Hours later, cult members kidnapped 22-year-old Victor Saul Cecida. Cecida had been a police officer, but became an enforcer for a gangster in Matamoros. He was tortured to death by the cult members. Sarah Dulce was not known to take part in the violence and was rarely around for the rituals. However, this was one of the few she attended. On April 9, 1989, the police returned to the ranch. They arrested Serafina and 2 other cult members, David Martinez and Sergio Martinez Salinas. Constanzo and the rest of the cult heard about the arrest and they fled the area. While the 3 men sat in jail, the police talked to a caretaker at the ranch. The caretaker told the police Adolfo Constanzo and his followers used the ranch, and the Hernandez family were frequent visitors. After a day in jail, Serafina told the police about the murders. Serafina went with the police to the ranch, and he pointed out where 13 bodies were buried. Serafina took the police to the shed where the Nganja was held. They found many dead animals. They also found human bones and brains. Adolfo Constanzo and his cult members became the most wanted people in North America. On April 22, 1989, someone went to the ranch and burned the shed down. Constanzo heard about the fire and he was enraged. He was hiding in an apartment in Mexico City with 4 followers, Sarah Aldelte, Alvaro de Leon Valdez, Omar Aria, and Martin Quintana. On May 6, 1989, The police were going door to door in the neighborhood where they were hiding out, looking for a missing child. The police had no idea the cult was hiding out in the apartment. When officers got near the building, Constanzo used a machine gun and opened fire on them. None of the police were killed, and they surrounded the building. Constanzo then ordered one of his followers, Alvaro de Leon Valdez, to shoot him. One of his original disciples, Martin Quintana, wanted to die with Constanzo. Valdez said he didn't want to shoot Constanzo, but Constanzo told him he had been reincarnated 3 times and he had become more powerful each time. Valdez did as he was ordered and shot them with a machine gun. 26-year-old Adolfo Constanzo and 23-year-old Martin Quintana were dead within seconds. The 14 surviving cult members were eventually taken into custody. Valdez was sentenced to 35 years for killing Constanzo and Quintana. Omar Aria, one of the original disciples, died from complications of AIDS in February 1990 while awaiting trial. Sarah Delce was acquitted of killing Constanzo. However, she was sentenced to 62 years for the other murders. It is believed that Adolfo Constanzo's cult killed at least 23 people. There is some speculation that they are responsible for the murders of 16 children under the age of 16 in Mexico City. However, this has never been proven. Some believe that Constanzo's cult didn't die with him and other followers continue with the cult. There is even some speculation that Adolfo Constanzo may have been reincarnated and is leading the cult in his new body. Thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. If you did find it interesting, please make sure you subscribe. We'll have a new video about the paranormal every week. If you just discovered this channel, please make sure you check out our other channel, Criminally Listed. We have over 325 videos featuring bizarre but true crime stories. You can find it at youtube.com/criminallylisted. Well, that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.